But me, you're me, Louie T. Welcome to the command post. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. I, of course, am your commander-in-chief, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. I got a number of topics that I need to knock down today. A little bit of house cleaning first before we get to the particulars of what the purpose of this video is for. I want to give a big shout out to Kevin Jones for the donation on PayPal. Remember, if you're out there and you want to support the LouieTeeNetwork, you aren't able to do it via a live stream, you're always working, or you're never able to catch me live, or you just wanted to do something off to the side via PayPal or CashApp, the links are down in the description of every single video that is uploaded on this channel. Please feel free to support, man. All of this definitely helps power the movement, and I want to thank Kevin Jones for his contribution. Thank you so much. Big ups to Kevin Jones for the PayPal donation. So I want to make a correction to something that I said the other night on the live stream. There was a super chat from Ryan A. And I had talked about the worst performance we had seen from the quarterback position in a half of football. You know, that Heineke game against Green Bay was pretty bad in the first half. And I likened it to the last performance that I thought was the worst we had seen, and that was Dirty Chez back in 2017 at the back end of that season versus the Giants when we were down like 30-0 at the half. And Ryan A. had mentioned Dwayne Haskins' half of football, and I think it spilled into the third quarter as well before he got benched ultimately for Taylor Heineke. I think it actually might have been most of the third quarter. Heineke didn't play much of the third. He played most of the fourth, if I'm not mistaken. But nonetheless, I was thinking of the 2019 game against Carolina, in which Ron Rivera was fired because Washington went to Carolina and won, you know, one of their 3 wins of the season. And that was the game where Adrian Peterson and Darius Geis went off. I think either both of them had over 100, or, you know, Peterson went over 100 and Geis was close to 100. I think both of them went over 100 though. And we shredded them on the ground, and we ultimately won that game. I was like, I don't remember Dwayne being that bad in that game. That's because that's not the game that he was referring to. Ryan was referring to the 2020 game in which Dwayne Haskins ultimately got benched. It was his final game in Washington, if you recall. I think it was a couple days later, maybe a week or 2 later, he got released by the team, and they moved on from Dwayne Haskins after that Panthers game, inserted Taylor Heineke, and the rest is history. Alex Smith ultimately came back. We went to the playoffs. Heineke started the playoff game against Tampa Bay, and Dwayne Haskins was never seen in a Washington uniform again. He was abysmal in that Carolina game. You know, this was brought up to me by Mickey Moon, so shout out to Mickey Moon for the correction there. I couldn't recall what Carolina game he was referring to, but Ryan was talking about the 2020 game, not the 2019 game. The 2020 game was very frustrating because it was a game that was there for the taking. If you remember, we had won 4 games in a row. We had gotten all the way to 6 and 7 rather on the season. We lose to the Seahawks. That's a game that Dwayne started because of Alex Smith's injury, and he didn't play poorly, but he didn't play well enough for us to win. He actually played well in the second half, started out really rough in the first half, played well in the second half. We lost that game, had some injuries down the stretch, specifically on the offensive line, that may have hampered us, but we just didn't make enough plays to win that game, and we dug ourselves too deep of a hole to come back and win. We were down 20-0 in that game before, you know, scoring 15 unanswered points and almost coming back and winning. But nonetheless, that gave Ron the confidence to start him the following week, and it did not go well. And that's an understatement. And it wasn't all just him. I also remember there was a fumbled and muffed punt by Steve Sims Jr. that led directly to, I think, a Carolina Panthers touchdown, if I'm not mistaken. But Dwayne was awful. I mean, I think he threw 2 picks in the first half. And then, you know, the final straw that broke the camel's back was on the 4th down. They went for it, and you got a wide open receiver right in front of him, right in his line of vision. And I think he took a sack or something like that. I don't know what he ultimately did with the football on that play, but we did not convert the fourth down, and that was it. I mean, he was awful. So you're right. That performance was pretty bad as well. It'd be up there in that conversation for worst half of football. And really, like I said, I think his bad play spilled into the second half, into the third quarter, whereas Dirty Ches, I think, was done after the first half. And same could be said for Heineke. He played better in the second half against Green Bay, but that's no here nor there. I did want to make that correction. Sorry for the miscommunication, Ryan. Now I understand what you were trying to communicate. Another thing that I wanted to come and talk to you about, and this is one of the main topics, there are two in particular. Everyone's talking about the joint practices. So you've seen a million videos on this. You're well aware that Washington will be traveling to Baltimore for 2 days in August 15th and 16th, which is a Tuesday and a Wednesday, to have two joint practices with the Baltimore Ravens at their facility. Then the two teams ultimately will travel back to Washington or Maryland to have their preseason game. Now, I want to talk about some different aspects of that, because everyone's telling you, oh, joint practices, yada, yada. I've seen a bunch of videos, and that's cool. But I want to dig into this. So joint practices are all the rage now. I mean, teams have been doing this for eons now. This isn't anything new. But what is new with these joint practices is that with the joint practices seem to come a disregard for the actual game itself. And so I've talked about this already with other teams in the league, and how the Rams are one of the most notorious for this. Chargers as well, because their head coach, Brandon Staley, came from L.A. with the Rams, so he believes in that same philosophical approach to the preseason, which is not playing my starters. I'm going to get all the work that I can in joint practices during the course of the week, and then disregard the actual game itself. We've talked about how different this year feels. And I've listed all the different things that have happened this offseason to promote change. That everything that we had done in the first 3 years under Ron felt stale. There weren't many changes. Everything was status quo. And if there was a change, it was a cosmetic change, like a quarterback. You swap out one veteran for a new veteran, and it's the same result. But it wasn't anything tangible. There weren't coaching changes being made. There weren't philosophical beliefs changing. There weren't things that we could actually say and point to and say, look, this is why this could be different. This offseason rather, we've seen philosophical shifts. We've seen changes that we hope bear fruit. We don't know what will ultimately come of these changes, but we've talked about it. We've seen them. We've seen the shifts, right? Here's another one. Ron hasn't had a joint practice since he's gotten here. He made mention of this at the end of the regular season. In the exit interview, he said he would love to have joint practices this upcoming offseason, in preseason rather, because he's had some success with them in the past and he wants to do something a little different. And so here's another example of us doing something different. If you want different results, do different things. And so I love adding this to the mix and adding this to the list of things that are different this offseason as to why you can be hopeful that this season is different. Now, 2 joint practices in August isn't going to turn you from an 8-win team to an 11-win team. I'm fully aware of that. But it's, again, added to the list of things that they're trying to do differently to see if they can't yield a different result. Now, here's the interesting thing. I look at these preseason games. I want to know, did you guys know that this is a Monday night? This is a nationally televised game, by the way, this preseason game versus the Ravens. So they'll be practicing with the Ravens in Baltimore on Tuesday and Wednesday, the 15th and the 16th. And then this is a Monday night game on the 21st of August. And then you got the quick turnaround 4 days later, or 3 days rather, and you play on Thursday, right? So what I'm essentially telling you is, first of all, we don't get nationally televised preseason games. That's new for me. So that's another change. But you're not going to see probably any of the starters in this game, and you're definitely not going to see any of them on that final game of the preseason in week 3. So I'm wondering, does this joint practice with the Ravens alter the way that we will view this team in the preseason? Because right now, as it stands, we've got the Cleveland Browns in week 1 of the preseason. I'm thinking right now that's the only time we're going to see the starters in any capacity in the preseason. Now, I could be wrong, and Rivera could not handle it the way the other teams handle it when they play their players in joint practices during the course of the week. Rivera could still trot his starters out there and have them play, a quarter or two and say, all right, that's it. You're done for the rest of the preseason. Don't need to see you guys anymore in live action. We'll see you guys for week 1 against the Arizona Cardinals. He could go about it that way, but my gut is that they're not going to play their starters. They're going to get as much work as they can in those 2 days, and he's not going to play his starters in that actual game. We know he's not playing them in the week 3 preseason game to wrap up the preseason against Cincinnati. We are fully aware of that because he's already shown his track record is to not play his starters in that final preseason game, and I don't blame him, even though there is extra time between that final preseason game and the start of the regular season. Still, you don't want to chance anything in that final preseason game. But my thought process is, are we going to see the starters in any other preseason game but the first one? I'm interested to see what they decide to do. Ron could, again, it's Wednesday and Thursday, right? Or Tuesday and Wednesday, rather. So there's plenty of time between that Wednesday joint practice and then the game on Monday for Ron to say, hey, you guys have had plenty of rest. Let's get out here, get you some work, because you're not playing in the third preseason and you won't game, and you won't see the field in any meaningful snaps until week 1. That's 3 weeks away. Let's get you some work in this second preseason game, even though Baltimore probably won't play any of their starters because of the joint practices. It'd be interesting to see what happens. Right now, my money is on we won't see any of the starters but the first preseason game. That's it. These joint practices will serve as a pseudo game for them. No need to put them on the field. You'll see a ton of backups in that game. And then 3 days later, after the Monday night contest versus Baltimore, you'll see all backups playing essentially in the preseason finale versus the Cincinnati Bengals. So it's going to be interesting to see how they handle the preseason. And then this is the last tidbit that I have for you. I've been hearing a lot circulating about new ownership coming in. What are some of the first things you would like to see them do? We've had this conversation on the channel numerous times. I told you I'm not, necessarily gung-ho on name change, all of that stuff, change uniforms, color scheme, all of that. I'm more so worried about the stadium, and I just want to win football games. So that's really where my head is as far as this is concerned. But I've seen it so often now that I just feel like I need to chime in. So, and I want to ask you guys, I really want to kind of take this opportunity to gauge where you guys are. I'm not going to do a poll. I've seen too many polls. I don't want to do a poll. I just want you to leave it down in the comment section. How do you feel about the name, the Washington Commanders, the color scheme, and the direction of the organization in that regard? Do you want to see new ownership come in and immediately pivot and look to change what has already been set in motion with the Commanders name, the branding, the uniforms, the color, all of that stuff? I want to know how you feel about it down in the comment section. So here's my 2 cents on the matter. And I'm not going to keep you here much longer than I need to. In short, I've already expressed to you guys how I feel. We'll never be the Redskins again. And so that whole part of me actually giving a damn about the name, it died once they snatched Redskins from us back in July of 2020. Okay? That's not coming back. So those days of glory in yesteryear, that shit is gone. Like, so many people are holding on to that. And I don't want to keep changing names. You know what I want? I want them to just stay with whatever they're going to do. We got the name Commanders. I'm fine with it. It is what it is. I don't give a shit at this point, right? Leave it alone. The colors, people are so hung up on the colors. We're never going to be the Redskins again. They kept the colors pretty much what they were. Yeah, they added in black, and that's, appalling to some. It's upsetting. It doesn't feel like the Redskins. We're not the Redskins anymore. That's why it doesn't feel like the Redskins. We're not the Redskins anymore. Let it go. So some people just can't get around that. And I understand. If you're of a certain age, it hits probably a little bit different. There's more of an attachment if you're 40 or 50 years old and you saw the glory years and you were a part of those Super Bowl wins in 82, 87, and 91, and you saw all of that, and it probably resonates with you a little bit more. It probably hits home for you just a tad bit more. And you would like to get back to something a little bit closer to those memories that you hold so dear. But for most people that are fans of the team, that are younger, at the end of the day, they don't have those fond memories of the Redskins. Would they prefer to be the Redskins? Absolutely. But we know that can't happen. We know it's not going to happen. And so for me, if you can't give me back Redskins, then I really don't care. And so we're the Commanders now. I really don't want to go through another rebrand. I'm just going to be honest with you. I really would prefer to just stick with what we've already established and move forward. Whatever name you come up with, it's going to be cheesy. It's not going to be great. And we're going to criticize it just like we did Commanders when they first had the name. Guess what? We're the Commanders now. People have gotten used to it. It is what it is. Some people say, I'll never get used to Commanders. That's fine. And whatever they name us, if they rebrand us, it'll take time to get used to that. And you may not like that name either. And then we got to go through another change in uniforms and all of that stuff. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't necessarily love the black uniforms. I don't hate them. I actually like that we have a black uniform now. I do like the incorporation of black into the color scheme, which I know for some people is taboo because we were always burgundy and gold and you just want to keep it the classic way and the look that we've had for all these years. But again, all of that stuff died when they snatched Redskins from us back in the summer of 2020, okay? All of that stuff died for me. I will never be as passionate about a name, a look, or anything surrounding this team again. So I personally would like to see them just leave it alone and focus on how to make this team and organization respectable again by winning on the field, getting us a new stadium, and getting this thing turned around. That's what I would like them to focus on. Not cosmetic things, not aesthetics like, name and uniform. We've been down that road before. Okay? We've been down that road before. Some people are like, I want to wipe this organization clean of anything Dan Snyder had to do with it. And that's fine. If that's your rationale for wanting to change the name because Dan had something to do with it, by all means, knock yourself out. I'm not that deep into it where I want Dan completely scrubbed from this organization, including the name that he left us with. I'm not even into all of that shit. At the end of the day, I just want to win. You can change the name and the uniforms and win all at the same time. They don't have to be mutually exclusive. You can do those things all at once, right? You can continue to fight for a new stadium. You can continue to work on getting this organization better. And you can also continue to try to figure out what's the best, move for the organization, name, jersey, all of that stuff. And you can do them simultaneously. It doesn't have to be one or the other, but at the end of the day, I'm really only concerned with the winning part. Get us a new stadium, right? And I would prefer it to be in DC where it belongs at the old RFK site. You can't get it there. I totally get it. You got to go wherever the money is. And the likelihood is the most money is probably going to be somewhere in Virginia. And that's fine by me. At the end of the day, I just want to win football games. And whatever the name of this team is, it is. And I think the tackiest thing they can do if they do decide to change it is have anything involving hogs. I think the Tutty, mascot is the stupidest thing I've ever seen. It's so dumb. And I don't want anything to do with hogs. Hogwarts, none of that shit. Okay? So personally, just leave this shit alone. We're the Commanders. You don't like the name? Too bad. As a wise man once told me, tough titty said the kitty, but the milk is still good. We'll see what they do. I'm not gonna fight it. Whether they come in and they say, "Hey, we're gonna change the name. We're gonna get different uniforms." Okay. I'm gonna go with the flow. You know, whatever they decide to do, one way or the other. What says you? Some of you are really passionate about this. You really want them to change it. I'm not gonna fight it. I just prefer them to just leave it the way it is. But my preference isn't strong enough. I'm not as invested enough to where I'm really going to, fight this if they decide to come in and uproot everything and change it again. I'm just sick of change. I'm just sick of changing. We've been changing since 2020. All right. I'm just sick of changing. We went from Redskins to football team, from football team to the Commanders. I'm ready to just, it's almost like someone that's been moving on constantly on the move, right? You're in a military family or, at some point you just want to settle down. You just want to get somewhere and settle in and say, this is home. If you've been to 5 different schools in 4 years, at some point you want to make friends and be able to say, Mom, Dad, I'm home. I don't want to go anywhere else. That's kind of where I am with this organization. We've settled in here with Commanders. I like my new friends. I'm really starting to get comfortable here. I don't want to move again. That's kind of where I am with this. If they come in, one day while I'm on social media and they say, hey, pack up your things, we're moving again, I'm going to be pissed, but guess what? I'll get over it, and hopefully this will be the last time that we move. So, what says you? Leave it down in the comment section. I can't wait to hear your responses and how you feel about everything that I said today, including the joint practices, what they're going to do with those preseason games. How many times are we going to see the starters? I think it's only once. Week 1 against Cleveland, and that's it. We're on TV in the preseason. So we do have 3 primetime games. Get out of here. That's trash. I'm your man, Louie T, signing off. Y'all know what it is. Post up. Take command. I'll see you guys next time. Have a good one. Enjoy your weekend. See you on the other side.
LouieTeeNetwork.